Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you can join this this online webinar of Meet the Oracle Masters, the online series part 2. And I'm very much delighted to have this series of sessions we're going to hold on every Wednesday at this time at 3 p.m. Central European Time. And it was all started with a good idea of my dear colleague Patrick Barrel, which initiated this online webinar series, part 1 with all kinds of database related stuff. And we thought it's a good idea maybe to also do this in all other Oracle technologies. So that's why the second initiative of this online webinar series was started. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Just a moment. So we have about 1 hour. I try to reserve some spots for Q&A. And if you have something very important, I can see everything because I'm presenting as well. So please leave your questions until the end, or write them down, or if you forget them. Anyway, this topic of this afternoon will be WebLogic. And I took this title, WebLogic as a New Era for Application Service with GraalVM. And it's more than only GraalVM. It's more like the approach of Oracle of doing WebLogic in modernized application infrastructure landscape. Either it's on-premise or it's on the cloud. So first of all, I'd like to tell you more about the Meet the Oracle Masters upcoming sessions. We have a range of Oracle experts who are going to talk about their favorite subjects. Some of them are Oracle employees, others are Oracle ACE or Oracle ACE directors. So we have a good mixture of Oracle and non-Oracle, to also be sometimes some critical, so you don't think we are all promoting Oracle. And I'd like to also emphasize that there's a misunderstanding that Oracle ACE directors are employees of Oracle. No, they are not. We're just highly critical about Oracle, but we love the products they build as well. So if you see the program as well, well, today it's my turn, and next week we get someone from Oracle, Jeff Pollock, who will talk about Golden Gate and data mesh. Hasso, also from Qualogy, is going to talk a bit about streams, enterprise streams with Kafka and all those technologies. Then we get Sven Bernhardt. He's an Oracle ACE director, works for a company in Germany, Opitz Consulting, and he will talk about cloud native integration. Phil Wilkins is from Capgemini, and he's going to talk about his favorite subject, API. And last but not least, Simon Coter from Oracle. He's product director from Oracle Linux, and he will talk about KVM, virtual machine, the new virtualization of Oracle instead of Oracle VM. So that's really a good program. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have some colleagues which are also interested, please ask them to register on the next coming sessions. It would be great. So next, well, me, I don't know if you know me, but yeah, short introduction of myself, although that's not the most important. But yeah, I'm from the Netherlands. I work at Qualogy. I've been an ACE since Oracle 2012, and ACE is a reward of Oracle for your contribution in the Oracle and technology community. Wrote 2 books about WebLogic, started my IT career in 1994, and I've been working with WebLogic and Middleware technologies around 2000. And the last few years I also focusing on containerization, cloud, DevOps, well, all the buzzwords you might have heard of or already also busy with. So the topics of today I'd like to discuss. The title already as 12 is WebLogic and GraalVM, a new era, but I'd like to discuss more than only GraalVM, because the one leads to the other. A renewal of your Java virtual machine, but also a renewal of your infrastructure, of how you approach your building your infrastructure, of how you're hosting your infrastructure, or do it in the cloud or on-premise. So I also would like to talk about containerization, the framework Oracle has for that. Also like to emphasize more a bit about the cloud neutral aspect Oracle also tries to implement in their current solutions, and a bit about Jakarta Enterprise and GraalVM integration. And then finally, I try to integrate GraalVM with WebLogic, which is not a job you'll do every day. And also I'll show you a very short demo of how it works. Right. First of all, I'd like to have a short flashback. I always like to have some kind of history, because it tells you where it comes from, what the first idea did, and how it led to what it is now. So I hope you're interested. I've done a lot of research, and I've talked to some of the WebLogic founders from the first year, and well, they had some company, they called them Tenga. First it was WebLogic, and they developed some drivers for the databases to extract all kinds of data out of it. And they wrote some drivers for that, which was called the DB project, for interacting first JDBC with databases. You must realize in that time Java was nothing more than some kind of an applet which is running some in maybe in a virtual environment on your desktop. It wasn't that mature as it is now, where Java is a major component of a lot of companies and enterprises in their application landscape. In that first time, they were just pioneers in that way of developing all these kinds of new initiatives. So alongside with DB also, they wanted to have more like a web interface to their to the data they want to expose. And you also must realize at the time it was more like a client-server model. You install a thick client on your PC or your desktop, and you extracted your data out of a data source or whatever, and that's about it. And at that time, also more the web-based applications came up. So that's why they wrote some classes to leverage application data in the form of a web page using servlets. And later on, they started to combine all this stuff together, and they created a construct which was called T3 Kona. T3 is a protocol as well for, it's actually an HTTP protocol, but for internal use for within WebLogic. But they created some kind of a first tier application server, which they called T3 Kona, which was actually the first start of WebLogic as an application server. Now the ground base, they told me they did a lot of things remote. They joined together sometimes at Cafe Roma in San Francisco. They transformed it to Cafe WebLogic. Well, that's about a bit of a background history. So in November 1997, end of 1997, they developed their first release together with Sun, which is called WebLogic Tenga, and they moved on, and they realized that if they wanted to market this product, this solution, they had to have a 100-pound gorilla for that. So they got into talk with negotiations with BEA at the time, and BEA acquired WebLogic in 1998 and made it to its flagship product, its application server product for all the products which were developed later on. So that took some years, and after a while, Oracle was on the strategy of replacing a lot of their Optane technology, their OC4J Java technologies, and also hardware-based technologies. So they acquired BEA in 2008, at that time WebLogic was at version 9, and they rebranded it to version 10.3 and placed the Oracle logo on it. And from there on, WebLogic started to evolve more and more, and it also became more and more a product to be as the ground of all the Oracle technologies, and especially the Oracle Fusion Middleware technologies, which all landed on WebLogic. Besides that, WebLogic was still this JakartaEE application server, which former customers of BEA used for their applications. So you could go both, either use it for your Fusion Middleware products and solutions, or use it for just JavaEE. And throughout the years, you saw more and more integration of all the products of what Oracle had already, or also acquired later in their Fusion Middleware portfolio, and integrated it more into WebLogic and Java. So at the end of 2000, I said 12, but it's 2011 actually, Oracle came with some kind of maintenance release to WebLogic 12. In fact, it was just a WebLogic 11 with a lot of enhancements throughout the past 3 years, but they rebranded it to WebLogic 12, which was also a commercial release, of course, for customers to get the attention. But the major important thing then was that it shifted to Java 6 at the time, Java EE 6. But the end of 2019, Oracle announced WebLogic 14, and WebLogic 14 is what I'm about to discuss in general in this session later on. So if you look at WebLogic, it's a foundation of several modules and projects. If you obtain a license, then you can obtain a license for a generic license, enterprise, or WebLogic Suite. Usually when you use a product like a Fusion Middleware product, you already have WebLogic Suite. So a lot of customers use WebLogic Suite license. And the WebLogic Suite license is about, of course, WebLogic Server, the JavaEE application server. It implements a grid, a data grid, Coherence, and Coherence grid is also can also be used for other languages, C++ and .NET. And as the motor, the engine around underneath Java and Java virtual machines are being used just as Oracle or other JVMs from other customers like companies like IBM also run WebLogic, and also open source. And if you look at the entire stack of the Oracle WebLogic Foundation, then you have an enterprise manager and the administration console, which are just graphical user interfaces for managing your WebLogic environments. And you have your development tools. Mainly there are JDeveloper and Eclipse, but you can also use some other tools if you prefer. It doesn't really matter. Every tool has its WebLogic integration. But from Oracle perspective, it's JDevelopers or Eclipse. So you can build your custom applications. You can package applications into a NIR file or install Fusion Middleware on top of it and run it on your WebLogic application server. So if you look at the latest versions and roadmaps from about 2012, then Oracle first had what I already told, WebLogic 11, 10.3.6 was the latest version, and Coherence, the data grid 3.7, and this lasted very long until 2011, approximately end of 2011. I know a lot of customers still running WebLogic 11 because their migration path is very complicated to do, especially when you build your entire Fusion Middleware stack, including SOA, BPM, Web Center Portal, content in 11, then you need to have a good migration path to your newer versions. So around 2000, between 2011 and 2014, end of 2012, 11, so 2012 actually, Oracle migrated to Java EE 6, already told you, and the JDKs, which WebLogic was certified for, were 7 and 8. And also Coherence got an update and it was rebranded to version 12.1 instead of the 3 version. Coherence was actually also acquired by Oracle. Then in 2015, around 2015, Oracle brought out 12.2.1. It's already 5 years ago, imagine that. And it looks like it was yesterday, but a lot of companies now and a lot of customers are running 12.2.1.4 maybe or 3 using Java EE 7. And also Middleware is already certified and implemented at 12.2.1/some number. And that's, well, still the current version. Support is still running for that version until 2025. And the latest version now, which we are going to discuss, is WebLogic 14.11. And that's already a huge major transition to more cloud neutral and open source for the Java community, but also for WebLogic to donate or to make WebLogic certified also for JakartaEE, not only for Java EE. It's more or less a bit of a seamless integration because all the standards of Java EE are implemented in JakartaEE 8. We don't know how it's going to be in the future, but for now, customers with Java EE can run JakartaEE without, well, maybe some minor problems, but the base is practically the same for now. So the JDKs which Oracle WebLogic uses for 14 is you can use JDK 8 or 11, and it's going 2019 and onwards. So future of WebLogic, it's really hard to say. Oracle also struggles themselves with it. I mean, the last 2018 Oracle World, they said there will be another WebLogic version 19. Now it's WebLogic 14. They already are confused about the versions. There already was some confusion about versions, but there still is. Like the databases are on 20 and WebLogic is on 14, and well, it remains this way, I suppose. But it's not the version only, but Oracle also struggling with what about an application server? It's still relevant to use. Should we go along with the new movements in the technology world? I think they do, because there's still a base of using application servers, and there are a lot of competitors on the market, either are open source or other companies, but still, I think it's still relevant for the moment. Don't know if it will be in the future, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, the focus of Oracle will be cloud and cloud native. That will be the first focus of Oracle. But it doesn't mean WebLogic won't be released for on-premise purposes. So that will also be, every new release will also be brought out for on-premise, but cloud is first focus. So the focus also will be on, of course, you can deploy or install your WebLogic environment on containers or on VMs or on bare metal. That all remains the same, but Oracle created a framework for WebLogic to deploy it on an orchestration container framework. So that it's also a good thing. And some of the initiatives Oracle started, like domain partitioning, is deprecated now, and they all focus now on what containerization and orchestration can leverage for Oracle WebLogic. So if you look at the WebLogic cloud options, first of all, there in the cloud version 1, there were some services. You have the SOAS cloud service, and you also have the Java cloud service. That's not there anymore. There's no cloud service in Gen 2 cloud. You only have 2 versions at the moment. If it's Oracle, you have the virtual machines. Actually, you can install your own virtual machines into your own subnet, into your own availability domain, using object storage, using a virtual cloud network. So that's in fact an infrastructure building with networking and storage and probably databases. You can do that, or you can say I will choose containerized solution, and that's on Oracle managed Kubernetes services, Oracle Kubernetes engine. This doesn't mean that Oracle will provide you a WebLogic ready Kubernetes environment. You still need to do some stuff on your Kubernetes engine, but for the moment, Oracle has some framework in place to make it more easier to install WebLogic on a Kubernetes cluster. So this is about some of the cloud options which you might consider if you want to migrate to the cloud, VM versus Kubernetes, and what's coming. Well, Oracle with its WebLogic application server tends to be cloud neutral, which means that they will containerize their entire WebLogic stack. They will use open source monitoring and tracing. They will use concepts like service mesh. They will implement security based on open source projects and applications, and they will tend to be as much as open source as they can be for this platform. You see some of the names which I will discuss in the next slide. But first of all, they try to get their platform. OKE is already CNCF certified, but they also want to have WebLogic as CNCF certified as an incubator and maybe a graduated project for running this in the cloud, on any cloud. So if you look at WebLogic server, it's already certified for production. My last session, I talked about containerization and secure containers. I didn't know it was already certified. Oracle uses some of technologies from out Kubernetes, and now it's certified and supported for production use. So you can run and build and operate your WebLogic Kubernetes cluster for production purposes now. And you can use several container runtimes. You can use a traditional Docker one or some other open source runtime. Orchestration is, of course, de facto standard Kubernetes, and service mesh is not really certified at the moment, but they're busy getting it done for Istio at the moment. And for the future for WebLogic servers to have a smaller footprint, if you now look at a typical WebLogic installation, then you've already touched the 3 gigs, and well, maybe it can be more lightweighted for this purpose. If you look at other application servers in open source, they're more lightweighted, and maybe that's also something you could consider for WebLogic. For the moment, it's not possible to choose any lightweight version. It's just WebLogic, the 100-pound gorilla, as you already told. And coherence is also supported within Kubernetes, so you can use WebLogic along with Kubernetes. So in fact, the entire WebLogic suite can be well, not lift and shift, but they can be migrated to a managed Kubernetes environment, or maybe your on-premises. Also, a major transition which I'd like to emphasize is about the Java and JakartaEE support. Already told you about that. And one of the things Oracle lately developed is Verrazzano. I forgot one Z in this case. That's with double Z. But first of all, the multi-cloud thing, which I also want to discuss, is about that you can also run WebLogic on other clouds. You can run it, of course, on AWS, but Oracle also have a heavy relationship now, a heavy partnership with Microsoft. So it's possible to run WebLogic on as an infrastructure on service on Azure VMs. The WebLogic image is available and is maintained by Oracle in the Azure Marketplace. So you can use an image from your Azure Marketplace and run your WebLogic VMs. And there are several options. You can do a single node. You can do only an admin server for maybe for development purposes. And you can do the cluster stuff like the typical normal clusters or the dynamic clusters. So it would look like this if you have WebLogic multi-cloud within your Azure subscription. Then you have maybe 2 regions. You have some replication in between. You have your Azure Traffic Manager to expose your application traffic to the outside world, and inside you have your Azure regions with the Oracle WebLogic cluster and an application gateway, and also connecting with the Azure Active Directory. You can also integrate it with the Oracle cloud, of course, building up some integration on that, but I won't discuss this any further because maybe we're running out of time. So another thing is that you also can run it on the Azure Kubernetes service. In fact, the Azure Kubernetes service is pretty much the same like the Oracle Kubernetes engine. Some minor differences, but the concepts are the same. So you have your resource group with all the resources for your Azure, and then you download every component for your WebLogic on Kubernetes and run it. It's practically the same. Right, the WebLogic Enterprise Platform. Oracle's path to open source is also Oracle's path to doing DevOps. So combine all these things: monitoring, updating, patching, extending, building everything into maybe one pipeline. That's the ultimate you want to achieve. In reality, it won't be always that way, but it's what Oracle also tends to have. And if you look at the development stuff, then you want to develop your applications regardless of what kind of language it is. Well, GraalVM can offer you this option. So develop it, except for Java or JakartaEE, also in another language. Maybe Go is not a language which GraalVM supports at the moment. Node.js or Python or Ruby. You can do it every language you can require can be developed. Of course, you want to have some kind of repository integrated into your development DevOps pipeline. So you want to build using a build tool like Jenkins or another one. If you run it in the cloud, you will consider Jenkins X or maybe Verrazzano or GitLab. You want to package, build, and deploy your applications using Docker or some alternatives for that, Podman or Builder. And you can want to operate, monitor, scale out, scale down your environment using all kinds of tools from the containerized open source CNCF community, like Elasticstack, like Jaeger, like Cryo, like Prometheus and Grafana. A lot of possibilities are available to use with your WebLogic Enterprise platform. Let's see. Let's see. Question. I will answer the questions later on. So please post your questions in the questions and answer, and we'll answer them at the end of my session. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So Oracle also developed an initiative which is called Verrazzano. It's well, it looks like Oracle is moving from the coffee thing to the wine thing, maybe, I don't know. But Verrazzano is also is a bridge, I think, somewhere in America, in the US. I'm not sure, but Verrazzano is originally an Italian wine. But for Oracle, it's an open source container platform, and Oracle wouldn't be Oracle if they want to label it as enterprise grade. So Kubernetes open source enterprise edition, some sort of that. And what it's about? Well, in fact, Kubernetes as a platform is very good, but it's not enough. If you see the amount of products which are in the CNCF ecosystem and which are graduated and which are still on hold, there are lots and loads. So if you want to build only a Kubernetes platform, then you can run your containers. But if you have more dependencies, more requirements, then you need extra tooling to run your Kubernetes and containers well. So what Oracle thought is, let's build a layer around containers and orchestration, which was already there. And what they did is they used some components and they built a project which is now available on GitHub. It's not CNCF incubated or graduated yet. I don't know if they're going to do that. They are not sure themselves, but this project spans containers which are based in Docker, the orchestration layer Kubernetes, manager Kubernetes with Rancher, use identity and access management using Keycloak, service routing using Istio, and logging and tracing using Elasticstack and Jaeger. I forgot monitoring, but monitoring is used is implemented with the Prometheus and Grafana. Sorry, got a glitch in my brain at the moment. So this is like what Verrazzano is looking like. It's the base. It's the running on a public, private, or hybrid cloud. Open operating systems, should be Linux, I guess. Your cloud native environment, the standard cloud native environment with the containerized runtime environments with the orchestration Kubernetes with some kind of a build tool, and your monitoring and managing stack using Prometheus, Grafana, Elastic, and everything I mentioned, and WebLogic and also other Java or polyglot can be integrated into this Verrazzano platform. So this is upcoming. It's not production ready, so I'm not sure actually if it's something worth to look at. It looks impressive, I must say, but yeah, it all stands with if it's easy to implement or it becomes more complicated. But it's good that Oracle does a lot of pre-work for you, so you don't have to think of all these implementation details around your monitoring and around your managing your security and everything. So that's a good thing, I guess. It's not available on OKE, so it's on the Oracle Kubernetes engine, but you have to implement it on-premise or on IaaS. So WebLogic itself, already told, it's certified for Docker, certified for Docker, but also for other containers, also for VM containers. And if you integrate or migrate your WebLogic environment into a Kubernetes cloud environment, then you have to have some integration tools. You have to have an operator. If you want to do monitoring, you have to have an export. If you want to migrate your current WebLogic domain, then you have to use the deploy tooling. So a lot of tools involved. So this looks like an Oracle containerized Kubernetes environment. Prometheus for monitoring, orchestration, Kubernetes, kubectl, or the Kubernetes dashboard. Within a Kubernetes cluster with a WebLogic cluster and admin server running on different paths with some sort of a load balancing in front. That can be an open source one, Traffic or Voyager, or use your cloud load balancing can be also done. So last about Kubernetes at the moment. If you look at Kubernetes, Kubernetes is good at basic container pod things, but if it becomes more complicated like WebLogic or any other technology stack, then you need something in between to understand what it does. and from out the open source community, they developed something like an operator, and an operator is in fact the in-between layer between Kubernetes and the product which you are running on Kubernetes. So an operator is used and knows everything about what's in the pod. So in this case, it's WebLogic, so it knows everything about how to create a WebLogic domain, how to manage your WebLogic using configured or dynamic clusters, knows about WebLogic channels, knows how to expose these channels to your management or administration, VLAN, and also, of course, use Elasticsearch to dig down into your log files, for instance. And also, because you have pods which are meant to be running in schedule, you can't stop and start your WebLogic in the traditional way. You have to use the Kubernetes way. So you use your Kubernetes operator to start, stop, and do some configuration stuff within within the Kubernetes operator. So you don't use any WebLogic things themselves. Of course, this operator use scripts internally, but it's the operator you use for managing your WebLogic environment. Right. Next thing is already told, Oracle donated Java to the open source community, and they donated it to evolve it more and more as an open source product. It's called JakartaEE, still the Indonesian influence in the product line. So it's donated to the Eclipse Foundation, and it's a new standard also for enterprise Java. So Oracle will also evolve to JakartaEE standards along with what the community develops in that area. It's still compatible with JavaEE, so you can run either JavaEE or JakartaEE on your WebLogic environment. WebLogic 14 supports JakartaEE as well. It's still the baseline for the evolution, I already told you. And you can use, in fact, the same APIs you're using with your JavaEE APIs. So it's more or less, well, I already told the lift and shift thing. Still needs to be done, of course, but it's very good compatible. And it makes it more, I already told you, cloud vendor neutral, open source community focused. So that's a good thing, to my opinion. Another thing is Oracle also thinks about another thing like in the technology world is, of course, microservices. Now, not every company needs to have an entire microservices landscape. If you have your application landscape and you have a Java monolith running and you want to get rid of it, then Oracle offers you a path to microservices using Helidon. And Helidon is in fact a package of libraries to migrate your Java applications into these microservices. And you can choose two versions, the lightweight one and the more heavier version, and it follows the latest standards. And it also supports the persistency standards and the transaction standards, the JPA and JTA supports. And it also supports the lightweighted protocols that like gRPC and UCP for your API messaging. So that's really a good thing. And also what's also relevant for WebLogic and also in terms of GraalVM, it's also supported by GraalVM. So that's also a major improvement. So GraalVM, yeah. Well, Graal or Grail, I don't know why it's called Graal, because I think the English word for Graal is Grail. Graal is also a Dutch word. It means the holy cup or beaker. I don't know if Graal is the holy cup or beaker, but it is in fact a technology which can run a lot of more applications than only based on Java. You might have heard of it. Runs JavaScript, runs Python, Ruby, but also low-level languages like C and C++. So that's really really an amazing thing, I guess. So you can run practically every application you think of with GraalVM. Either you run it standalone or use some application server. This application service can be Tomcat or Wildfly or Payara, or maybe an enterprise one like WebLogic. So it tends to be high performance. Depends on how you look at it, or this high performance thing, but it's fully Java compliant. So you can, in fact, replace your Java hotspot VM with your GraalVM. You have two editions. You have the community edition, which is fully open source, and I already told you it's for Java-based languages, not only Java but also other type of languages, Spring, Kotlin, Scala, and the more for non-Java like Node.js, Python, Ruby, and the low-level systems languages. So if you look at the traditional Java virtual machine, then you can see how it basically works. You have your Java code here deployed somewhere, or resigned somewhere on storage, I don't know. You have your Java JDK compiler. This JDK compiler translates all your Java into a runtime compiler language using your Java runtime environment. And that translates everything into bytecode, Java bytecode, and that's being picked up by your Java runtime. So this is in fact how a traditional Java virtual machine works. So this is about what I talked about. Your code enters your JVM. It does some operations like garbage collect, or maybe defragment, or other things to make your code good, compressed, and as fast as possible, and removes all the garbage from it. And then it transforms into a data structure to be transformed eventually into bytecode, into your machine language. So if you look at GraalVM, the foundation is still the Java virtual machine. It's called GraalVM, but still a lot of things are based on the Java virtual machine. So on top of that, you have your JVM compiler interface for your JVM-based languages, or for your for your Java-based languages. On top of that, you have the GraalVM compiler if you run JVM languages like Kotlin, Scala, Java, Spring. But for other languages, the GraalVM compiler is not enough. You need to have some interpreter in between. So the first one is a framework which is called Truffle, and Truffle is for some other lightweight non-Java languages like Python, R, Ruby, JS. Already told about them. And if you want to do this low-level thing I told you with C, C++ or Fortran, then you can use sorry, it's too fast. Sulong framework, which is a framework and an interpreter for these kind of languages. So this is an example flow of a low C++ code. Sorry. You use the interpreter from your Sulong framework, the low-level virtual machine interpreter, and this interpreter will translate it to your Sulong, and Sulong will be interpreted by the Truffle framework, and in the end it will be picked up by the GraalVM compiler to run as machine code, to compile and execute as machine code. So the next, the other version you have is the GraalVM EE, the Enterprise Edition. Now you might already suspect that it's not free. It's not the open source implementation, the enterprise implementation, and it has a license, a subscription license, which is about CPU or named user plus, with a core factor of a quarter of the CPU. But that doesn't count if you run it on WebLogic, then it's included, or you can run it on your cloud infrastructure. Then it's also free to use GraalVM EE. So that's good. And you have two modes to run GraalVM. You can run it. That also counts for the CE edition. You can use it just-in-time compiler. This is done by WebLogic, for instance, and all the other Java application versions. Or you can do the standalone. Then you use native image, and this can be used when you run a Docker image using this AOT native image. So you pull a native image for GraalVM and run it ahead of time, because that's what it's mean. And ahead of time can be better performant than just-in-time compilers. So now about the GraalVM integration into WebLogic. I'm naturally not a developer, so a lot of developers already developed a lot of GraalVM applications. A lot of open source stuff. I tried to look for some enterprise application stuff, but not a lot. So in my demo, I have a very simple demo of running a JavaScript application in WebLogic. But in this case, when you want to do a GraalVM enterprise integration, then you have to obtain the GraalVM enterprise package. There's no container version in the Oracle container registry or in the Docker registry, so you have to build them yourself. So that's what I did. And then I pushed it to a private registry and created a WebLogic domain on Kubernetes, on the Oracle Kubernetes engine, using the WebLogic Kubernetes operator. So first of all, you can download it from the Oracle site, to download it from the Oracle, not from the OTN, but from eDelivery. You can download the native image to be used and to build for your Docker. This native image can also be used as a standalone, as I already told, to use the AOT mode. So when you look at the GraalVM enterprise image build, then it's a layered image build within Docker. This is also done with other versions of WebLogic, so it keeps your image more lightweighted. First of all, you have a base image, which is based in my case on Oracle Linux Slim version. I got some issues with that because not all tools were installed. So I added some extra stuff like diff and everything. Another thing is that you can also do it using an init container within Kubernetes, but I chose it to build in my image. It didn't took much space extra. With this base image, I built this GraalVM Enterprise Edition based on version 19.3.2. And on top of that, I've built the WebLogic image using this GraalVM image and pushed it to a private container registry. So these are the commands I used. So Docker build with a Docker file, tag the image to be pushed to this private registry, and use and push it to the registry. And then you can see this is a Oracle container registry in the Oracle Cloud. That GraalVM image is pushed to my registry to be pulled by the WebLogic image later on. The same I did for the WebLogic image. There was no WebLogic image using the GraalVM, so I built a WebLogic Docker image to be used with the GraalVM image and pushed it to the registry and said to the Docker image, pull this one from this registry, which I already pushed. And then I integrated it into a Kubernetes environment using these images and the WebLogic operator. So first of all, I'd like to show you some short demo. I have to share another screen, just a moment. Okay, so this is my client. First of all, I want to show you the GraalVM Docker image. So I go to where it is at the moment. Hope everyone sees it. If not, please throw it in the chat. I think everyone sees it. I have here my Docker file. Here's a download of the GraalVM Enterprise image, which I downloaded from eDelivery. And here in this Docker file, I said extract the tar file and build this Docker image from it. So I can do that. So if I look at Docker images, I have to copy some commands. Here you can see I already uploaded some of them. This is the WebLogic image. This is the GraalVM image, and they're all in this Oracle Cloud repository. But building this Docker file locally is all about this actually. That takes a while. I will show you something else. So at the moment I have a Kubernetes cluster running. It takes a while because I have a client running, and this client uses the Kubernetes interface with the OCI Oracle Cloud interface. So it takes some time before I get an answer to my client. You can see the build is still running for my Docker image. This takes a very long time. Right, there it is. I have 3 nodes, a 3-node cluster. Within OKE, you don't get to see the master, so these are all worker nodes, in fact. And I've created pods in a separate namespace for WebLogic. The namespace is called WLS14. Right, the Docker images has been built. And next thing is that I need to tag it, as already showed you in the previous slides. I won't do that because it takes too much time, and I can see it's almost 5 minutes until my time is up. So I won't do that. I will show you some other stuff at the moment. So here you can see I have WebLogic domain admin server running, WebLogic managed server running, and WebLogic managed server 2 running. Now to see that the Docker image I built is running the GraalVM version, I will show you. I have to run sudo because Docker is only permitted to run as root, unfortunately. So we'll do it here. And I need to have the container which I've built. It's this one. I didn't tag it, so it doesn't have a name at the moment. So I use the container image. And then I stick, after it, I stick Java minus version. Then you can see it's running GraalVM. So you can see in here, it's running GraalVM. I can do the same for the WebLogic Kubernetes environments. Here. So if I run a qexec T, and then the path, take the domain admin server, and 14. I'll do it this way. Typo, sorry for that. Takes a while. I will answer the question, is it possible to, the question about from Verrazzano is it possible to upgrade from 11 to 12 and take all configuration details using config.sh? Yeah, there is, you can do an export using WLST commands. So you can do that one. Okay, I mean, and I'm in the container now, in the WebLogic domain admin server container, and you can see it's also running the GraalVM JVM. So the last thing I wanted to show you is let's share another screen now. Just a moment. Share my WebLogic screen. Here. So this is WebLogic 14 running on Kubernetes. So here it's running, and I have a small application running a polyglot JakartaEE, which runs JavaScript. So I call it using this address and click on the link of the JavaScript, and underneath JavaScript is running this GraalVM JVM. So that's about my presentation at the moment. I have some conclusions still left. Let me switch over to my presentation mode again. So conclusion and open ends. If you run WebLogic 14 on JDK 11, then you can't make use of every feature which is in JDK 11, like the modular feature which is on Java 11. You can't use that. Still, you have to use jar files, but you won't notice anything about that. Java developers know how to approach that one. There is still no Fusion Middleware support for 14 at the moment, so it's only certified for running JavaEE or JakartaEE now. Focus for Oracle is already told container cloud neutral things. It's also a question about ongoing evolution of how we do IT. Do we still need to do everything on premise? Do we still need to build applications for these application servers or not? So that's also comes to the last question already, is are application servers still relevant? For the moment, I think they are, but I don't know for the future. I think it's for the transition phase. It's really they are still relevant, and companies still have a lot of legacy which they can get rid of in an instant. So it will be used, I think, yeah, for a long time. And a good thing of now is that this WebLogic supports many languages now. So supporting GraalVM means supporting a lot of languages, which needs to be built out, of course, because they're not there. We're not there yet, but I can see a great future for that kind of way of approaching it. So that's about it. We'll look if there are still some questions and answers. This thing of upgrade to 11 to 12C, please leave me a note and I will answer you better. There are some possibilities to do this, but for instance, if you do, if you want to do it to a Kubernetes orchestrated environment, then you can do it certainly because you can use the WebLogic migration tool, which makes, in fact, migrates everything to YAML files. So all your configuration is included. And I think the WebLogic deploy tool it's called an image tool also can be used for using this for migrating from on-premise to on-premise. But drop me a note, my email address somewhere, yeah, I will answer that. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Next week, attend to Jeff Pollock with this data mesh story, or any of the other sessions in the coming weeks. I hope you enjoyed them too, and well, have a good evening, or a good morning, or a good afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.